All right, hello wine drinking people. Time for more of what I've had to drink yesterday. A lot of great wines taken down the month of January 2014. And this Vintage Port tasting happened the night after our Madeira tasting. So a lot of the world's greatest sweet wines. 2 nights in a row. And Vintage Port, unlike other types of port, is only made 3-4 times a decade at the most. It's kept in these large pipes, they call it casks. They're 100 gallons, so quite a bit bigger than the barriques. And after 2 years, they taste it and they decide, each house decides whether they want to declare a vintage year. So it's not something that the Portuguese government tells them they have to do or can or can't do. It is something each house does individually. And a lot of times, they may have more vintages that are, quality-wise, potential for vintage, but they can only sell so much vintage port, so you really have to limit it to 3 or maybe 4 of the best vintages every decade. Well, some of these old vintages like the 48 and 55, these wines are disappearing from the marketplace. And back then they didn't have to bottle these wines at the houses in Portugal. They actually shipped them over to England in casks. So the 48 that we had was bottled in England by John Harvey and Sons. So, this was a really ugly looking bottle. Let me tell you, man. The ullage on it was down low here. And with ports, they're fortified wines. They're a little sturdier than other wines, so you don't have to worry as much. But I was a little bit worried with this. And let me tell you, this wine was stunning. The 1948 Taylor was the wine of the night on 10 of the taster scorecards. This wine had lovely fruit still in it, like cherry pie, the hand of brown spice, a light smoke to the nose, very complex. On the palate, smooth and silky, with layers of fruit, still lovely freshness here, and a very nuanced finish here. Everything in proportion, really long. This wine could go another 10 or 20 years. Killer juice, one of the best old ports that I've ever had. It's always great when the old dogs show up. The 1955 Martinez, this is not a very well-known house, but a great vintage, and it was incredible. The richness in this wine, even on the nose, had a great deal of that red cherry pie fruit. Maybe a bit too much sweetness, though, and not enough of everything else. Not as complex as the other wines, but delicious, albeit simple, and still very useful on the tongue. As time goes on, the wine just opened up and opened up, very fresh and lively, but again, just not as complex as the other wines, but incredible for its age, still excellent juice. The 1963 Warre, this wine also had a lot of that cherry pie fruit, red licorice spice, notes of milk chocolate, lovely complexity here on the nose. The 1963 vintage, a killer vintage in a Porto. Very smooth wine on the tongue with still a lot of nice fruit, silky tannins here, a nice amount of spice, and a wonderful balance and lovely concentration. Again, most excellent juice. One of my favorite wines of the night. And it got a couple votes for second place. The 70 grams, this wine had a lovely cherry berry fruit to it, some dried tobacco spice on the nose, a bit of a shy flower at first, but opening up real nicely. Lovely balance, smooth and silky texture with this wine, lovely cherry fruit here, and a light and pleasant finish, but most excellent juice. The grams, usually the sweeter of the port houses, the major port houses. Cockburns, everybody said Cockburns with this, but I believe it's pronounced Cockburns. And this wine didn't get great press, 86 points, but that's why we do these tastings. I'm investing my money in the 1970 Cockburns because this wine you can find at a fraction of the cost at some of these higher rated 1970s, a great vintage. And this wine got like 4 votes for wine of the night. And, this wine had a really pretty nose, some coffee, mocha, marzipan, a lot of red cherry fruit, really seductive, and just lovely balance in this wine. Smooth and silky on the tongue, and lots of fruit. Maybe not the most complex wine of the night, but one of the most balanced wines on the table. Just everything in perfect balance. Excellent juice. The 1970 Fonseca, I was surprised this wine didn't get 1 vote for wine of the night, so I had to throw my vote in the hat because this wine was most excellent. Wonderful intensity on the nose. This wine had a solid core, sweet cherry liqueur-like fruit, smoke, spice, really compelling on the nose. A big wine on the palate as well. Maybe a little bit hot on the finish. That's the only negative quality I could find about this wine. Just packed with fruit, though. It seemed to have everything in the proportion. Just a lot of spice there at the end. The 1970 Dow, Well, this wine was a little bit off on the nose, maybe a bit of oxidization, but it did blow off on the second day. On the next morning, not as much there. Some tobacco spice showing. Really nice concentrated fruit here on the tongue. Sweet red cherry fruits. A bit of that brown spice and that earthy nuance showing through the nose on the finish also. But, this wine was very good. I would like to see another bottle of it just to see how it's shown, to see if it's consistent. But still, we drank the whole bottle. It was still pretty damn good, even though it may have been slightly off. The 77 Gould Campbell was the second highest rated wine on the table. This wine didn't get a vote for first or second place, but, maybe because it was the youngest wine in the bunch, 77. Still very youthful in color, lots of ripe red cherry liqueur-like fruit, good amount of that sweet tobacco spice, coffee on the nose, and with little time in the glass, it seemed to open up, but still, even though it was powerful in the fruit department, it didn't seem to have the complexity of the other wines, but still very, very fresh and youthful here for a 77. Excellent juice. That's what we had to drink at our vintage port tasting. I'm your host, Andrew Lampasoni, signing off for the Wine Watch, saying remember, always drink the good stuff first.